So welcome to 251 of you and then some, because there, as Sherilyn mentioned, there's a number of you who have multiple people joining at once. This is a huge thrill for us. We're really excited that you're all joining us, and we're also really thrilled that we've clearly found something that's really wanted and needed, and that we can offer it. So that makes all of our hearts shine and with warmth and happiness to be able to offer something that's really needed. So welcome to all of you. We have 5 regional councils joining together and probably a few other regional council people from other regional councils who are joining us. I'm just going to take a quick minute to introduce some of the regional council staff we have with us. So hopefully at least one face is familiar to you here, and if not, by the end of today, hopefully you'll know which face you want to have be familiar to you. So my name is Andrea Allen, and I am a Pastoral Relations and Community of Faith Support Minister for Shining Waters. And in Shining Waters, we have a couple of staff people who have the same portfolio. So I've pinned here as well with us, we've got Unju Park, who's also a Pastoral Relations and Community of Faith Support Minister. And one of our property and finance experts has joined us as well from Shining Waters. We've got Jody Maltby, who is helping to lead tonight. And those of you from Shining Waters, you'll see more of Jody towards the end of our time. And we have from Canadian Shield Regional Council, we've got the lovely Diane Matheson Jimenez, who's joining us. From Western Ontario Waterways, we have John Neff, who's joining us, and he's a Community of Faith Support Minister as well as is Diane, as well as a staff lead, as well as Jody. And joining us from Horseshoe Falls Regional Council, we have Beverly Tyhurst. And those of you who are joining us tonight from Antler River Watershed Regional Council, we are very thrilled to have you. And your staff member is Carlene Kimber, and she is out supporting the Center for Christian Studies this week on her vacation. So you get to enjoy the expertise of everyone tonight. Oh, there's a lot of echo in the audio. Are others hearing the echo as well? I think we're trying to, I hear it now. We're trying to mute people as they come, just because that's probably where our echoes are coming. So if you currently are not muted, if you could mute yourself, that will help with the echo situation here. Okay. Well, friends, we have a very full agenda tonight, and so we're looking forward to getting started. And I am going to pass the mic, so to speak, over to Beverly, who's going to help us acknowledge our lands and our treaties.
So I have a land acknowledgement for all 5 regions. So we acknowledge that we gather on lands and waters that have been home to Indigenous peoples since time immemorial. Across the regions of Shining Waters, Horseshoe Falls, Antler River, Western Ontario Waterways, and the Canadian Shield, we are situated on the traditional territories of many Indigenous nations, including the Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, Wendat, Neutral Atawatron, Cree, Oji-Cree, and Algonquin peoples. These lands and waters, rivers, lakes, forests, escarpments, and falls have sustained Indigenous communities for thousands of years and continue to do so today. These territories are governed by treaties and agreements intended to establish relationships of respect and shared responsibility. We acknowledge the enduring presence, rights, and stewardship of the Indigenous peoples who continue to live on and care for these lands. As the United Church of Canada, we confess that our church has benefited from colonization and has caused deep harm through its colonial practices. We commit ourselves to the ongoing work of truth, repentance, reconciliation, and right relationship, listening to Indigenous voices, honoring treaty responsibilities, and caring faithfully for all creation. May we walk humbly upon this land, seek justice and healing, and live into relationships of respect, responsibility, and hope. So I'll turn it over to you, Andrea.
Andrea, could you unmute yourself?
That's probably helpful. Thank you very much. Thank you, Beverly. That was a beautiful way to open our time together, and quite the achievement being able to offer an appropriate acknowledgement given the vast amount of space we all come from. So now, friends, I will invite you to settle yourself however you're joining us and to take a deep breath. And let us join our hearts and our souls together as we open our time with prayer. Gracious Creator, we gather tonight with a shared commitment to the mission, the values, the hopes of the United Church of Canada and all of the communities of faith and communities that we join from. Tonight, we ask that you might help us to hear your call for each and every one of us into bold discipleship as we explore what it means to be trustees of congregations, of buildings, trustees of the future, and trustees of our past. Open us all to feel your Spirit moving in and through us. And as we complete our time together, help us to return back into our everyday lives, slightly changed, with a greater sense of connection, a greater sense of discernment, a greater sense of hope and love. We pray these things in the name of the one who you sent into the world because you love us so much. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Okay, I will pass it over to my friend John, who has just gotten started.
Thanks, Andrea. It is my privilege to introduce Sherilyn Stadelbauer-Sampa. As I was thinking of what I would say, it struck me that there are more letters in Sherilyn's name than there are letters in the alphabet. Think about that one. Anyway, fondly known to us as CA for short. Sherilyn currently serves as Senior Governance Support Lead with OMGS. That's the Office of Moderator and General Secretary, Programs and Administration for the United Church of Canada, supporting congregations and regional councils with governance, trusteeship, and policy matters. Many of us also know Sherilyn through her extensive leadership experience. She previously served as Executive Minister for Antler River Watershed, Horseshoe Falls, and Western Ontario Waterways Regional Councils, as well as prior to that, Executive Secretary of London Conference, and has also been entrusted with broader national leadership responsibilities, including serving as Acting General Secretary, which I think you're currently serving right now. Yes, I see the nod. Sherilyn has a lifelong love for the United Church of Canada and brings a deep practical understanding of how national policy, regional governance, and congregational life intersect. And we're grateful to have her wisdom and leadership with us today. Just before I turn it over to CA, CA is going to do her presentation, and I would ask participants to please write your questions in the chat. They are going to be gathered up as you write them, and there'll be a time for question period after Sherilyn is done. So Sherilyn, over to you.
Thank you, Dawn. Thank you for that lovely introduction. Thank you to all of you who've joined the call tonight. Thank you for being trustees. It's a critical role in the church. It's one of the essential roles. You actually cannot be a congregation without trustees. So you are performing an important function in your local context and in the way your local context is connected to the denomination. And we're grateful for your service. I'm going to provide a lot of information tonight. Don't worry about taking notes or absorbing all of it, because we're going to share the PowerPoint slide. I'm also not going to tell you anything that you can't find in some of the resources I'll offer at the end. So settle in, listen, be sure to add your questions to the chat where my colleagues are going to pull some of them together and then be able to collate similar themes for the questions. I am prepared to bet money on it, and I'm a very cautious bettor, that when you were invited to be a trustee, this was the sales pitch. You can be a trustee. There's nothing to it. The committee hardly ever meets. You don't have much work. It's a really easy job. Well, tonight I'm going to dispel that narrative for you, and I'm going to hope that by the end of the evening you feel not overwhelmed, but like you have tools to fulfill your role faithfully. So I'll invite Joanne to turn to our first slide, and I'm going to introduce you to someone you probably already know. You may know that this is Genie and the Lamp from the Disney animated cartoon, Aladdin. And this is just after Aladdin has rubbed the lamp and set the genie free, and the genie's gone like a crick in my neck. If we can go to the next slide, John. And the genie says something very important. The genie says, you know, being a genie, phenomenal cosmic powers, itty bitty living space. Now, that image has always struck me as a helpful one when thinking about being a trustee. Phenomenal responsibility, itty bitty authority. So let's look at what some of those phenomenal responsibilities are that trustees have. To serve as a trustee is to act in the best interests of the beneficiary. And in the case of trustees, you are serving two beneficiaries. It's important that you remember that. Everything that is in your trust is for the use of the congregation. But if the congregation no longer has use of it, it's for the ministries of the United Church of Canada. So you must always be balancing the claims of both beneficiaries on the assets that you hold in trust. Our congregations hold assets in trust through the United Church of Canada Act. And that act was, when that act was instituted in 1925, it included the model trust deed, which is part of it. And that's available for you. You can read the act online. The model trust deed is in the manual. And that's where your legal obligations are set out. You are a part, in the eyes of the law, of the United Church of Canada. So that's why you need to work within the framework of the United Church of Canada, because we care a mutual responsibility for the well-being and the liabilities. To be a trustee, to be the legal representative of the congregation. You are the people who will sign legal documents, who will sign off on bequests that are received, the people who will be the representatives in any sort of legal proceeding. Your job is to ensure that the congregation is complying with United Church requirements on property, on major renovations, and major assets. And I'll talk about all three of those in a bit. You need to ensure that your congregation is properly insured. I'll give a bit more on that as well. You manage congregational investments. And then it's important to go back to what I said earlier, where you're the legal representatives. So you need to foster compliance with legal requirements. Requirements like copyright law, proper employment law. You're not setting those terms, but you're setting the stage. Those are decisions of the board, but you do need to be clear why the board should be doing what is legally required in terms of employment legislation, copyright, etc. Now, when I talk about that's your huge, phenomenal responsibility, your itty-bitty authority is that you don't make many decisions. You take direction. So the governing body of the congregation, whether you have a board or a council, whatever your model is, gives direction to the trustees. Note that it's the governing body. It's not the congregation. Now, it is the role of the governing body to make sure that it has input from the congregation on major matters. It's the role of the governing body to keep the congregation informed. But it's also the role of the governing body to direct the trustees. So on a property matter, it might be that the council requests that the board of trustees ask the regional council for permission to. That would be the type of decision that would be made. Who is a trustee? The trustees are elected by the congregation at a congregational meeting called for that purpose. There should be between 3 and 15 trustees, as sometimes there are more than 15 in the case of an amalgamation. Well, all the trustees of the amalgamating congregations finish a term or new decisions are made. A trustee must be the age of majority. That's a legal requirement. The majority of the board of the trustees must be members of the United Church of the congregation. Some trustee boards make appointments for life. I would encourage you to think about having terms for trustees. What terms do is they allow you to rotate membership to ensure continuity. So you are less likely to have a small cohort of trustees with 20 years experience and lose them all within 12 months. When a congregation is calling their annual meeting, it is a good practice as part of that to indicate that you'll be confirming the membership of the board of trustees. And each year at the annual meeting to do that by a motion, we confirm that the following are the trustees of our congregation. Now, someone who is a trustee who doesn't always realize it is your called or appointed ministry personnel or your pastoral charge supervisor. In fact, they have the privilege to chair the board of trustees should they wish. We don't encourage that. We encourage to have a lay leader from the congregation chair, but they are eligible to chair and need to indicate that they do not wish to chair, but they should always be made aware of meetings. Unlike with your governing body, they are not essential for quorum. You could have a meeting if they were not able to be there, but they are one of your trustees, just like the trustees elected by the congregation. Their key role is to be aware of and to make sure that the trustees know regional council requirements and United Church polity and process. They are a source of information to you that can help you as you navigate complex discussion topics. Let's go to our next slide, Joan. And what if somebody decides they don't want to be a trustee anymore, or they're not fulfilling their duties as a trustee and the community of faith decides they don't want them to be a trustee anymore? If they're resigning of their own will, they send a letter to the secretary of the congregation and the board of trustees, and that letter triggers a congregational meeting. The earliest that can be held is after worship on the second Sunday after it was announced. At that meeting, a person might offer their reasons for resignation. If the concern is that they've been directed to do something by the governing body they don't agree with, then they should resign, bearing in mind that the role of the trustees, provided what is being asked of them is within United Church polity and is approved by the governing body and the regional council, the trustees' role is to comply with it, not to question it. But they can speak at that meeting, or they can speak to the reasons for removal. If, for example, a congregation wanted to say, we haven't seen this person at church for 2 years, they haven't been at a trustee meeting, the person might then choose to say, well, I've had some mobility issues, I wasn't able. The vote to accept the resignation or the removal requires a 2/3 majority. And there are some situations that automatically end trusteeship, the death of the trustee, the legal incapacitation of the trustee, or bankruptcy. Now, trustees often meet only when they have work. The dilemma with that is that you don't establish a regular pattern or regular minutes. It's helpful to have regular meetings, quarterly or at least semi-annually. The minutes of those meetings need to be kept, and they need to be available for the governing body and for the regional council to be able to review. If it's a regular meeting, in other words, it's the trustees getting together, they don't have a property or a legal matter that's coming before them, the notice can be quite short. It can be as short as 1 day given in worship. You could on Sunday say we want to have a trustees meeting and then meet on Monday. But if it is what we call a special meeting, meaning that it's called to deal with a property matter or a legal action, then it must have at least 7 days notice in writing. And that written notice must include time, place, and purpose. And you can deliver that written notice in a variety of ways, registered mail, by hand and tracking delivery. And you can also deliver it by email with a read receipt attached to it. Now, property is the number one responsibility of trustees. And they deal with real property, meaning the land and the buildings of the church. So one of the responsibilities of the trustees is to assess risk. It's to be clear when things are happening at the church that feel that they need attention. For example, if the church has a cracked sidewalk and people are regularly tripping over it, that's a matter that the trustees might discuss with the governing body to get some direction on. It's carrying a risk that's not helpful for the church. We encourage all boards of trustees to confirm title. Now, when you confirm title, you might find a few different things. You might find that the title's in the name of the Methodist Church or the Presbyterians or the Congregationalists, or you might find that it's in the name of your congregation of the United Church, but that every trustee listed there has since moved out of the role or is deceased. Don't worry about the accuracy of the names of the trustees on title. We have a mechanism when we're handling property decisions where we can deal with that. It's not something you need to undertake every time you have a change of trustees, but it is good to be able to have that motion from the annual meeting so you can say, in January of 2026, our congregation confirmed that these are our trustees. We hold property collectively in the United Church for purposes of common good. So when a trustee the Board of Trustees is considering the sale of property or a mortgage on the property or a lease that is a kind of, there are different leases. There are different types of leases, but it's always good to check with your regional council what they're expecting. Or is looking to buy property, you need the regional council's approval to be able to do that. And the regional council will provide a certificate of resolution authorizing that transaction, which should accompany it in order to make it legal. Also with property comes renovations. Every regional council sets a threshold for major renovations. Regional councils don't need to know that you're changing the light bulbs out, but they do need to know that you're spending X amount, if it meets the threshold, to rewire the church. So it's helpful to be in touch with your regional council so you're clear about what the major renovations threshold is. And that's determined by the regional council. So it will be different from regional council to regional council, just because you might know what it was in, if you're ministry personnel in a previous regional council, or what it was in a previous presbytery. It could be quite different in your current regional council. So check with your regional council. One of the other key responsibilities of trustees is insurance. We recommend replacement value. The United Church offers our own self-insurance program, UCC Protect. And the advantage of that program is it has helped us to manage premiums for communities of faith. And additionally, what that program does, it means that the loss is shared across the denomination. If you experience a loss, the impact of the loss is shared by the entire denomination. It's not on you as a single client, which is different from if you have denomination outside of insurance outside of UCC Protect. Insurers do at times expect an appraisal. They ask for a lot of documented information. So there is a firm recruited through the General Council who can offer appraisals at a reasonable price if you need to get one. And consequently, at that point, be sure to reach out to your regional council and they can get that information for you and pass it along to you. The appraisal firm likes to have a few sites in a specific area when they come to do appraisals. If you say, we have this sanctuary that seats 700, we are never going to replace it, then you need to think carefully about the level to which you insure. Remember, if you are inadequately insured, the law has deemed that the trustees are understood to have self-insured. So for your protection as a trustee, take some steps. I encourage you to make sure you receive direction from the governing body, that you confirm the option with your insurer, and that you discuss it with your regional council. Remember the two beneficiaries. Anytime you underinsure, you put both of those beneficiaries at risk. In terms of rentals, make sure that your congregation is named as an additional insured for outside users, and keep that information on file. And then, while it seems like it's maintaining paper for too long, remember that some claims can be historic. So, for example, if someone who is now in their 30s says, when I was 10 years old, I was sexually abused by the minister of XYZ congregation. XYZ congregation wants to pull on their liability insurance from 20 years ago to make any settlements, which they can't do if they can't remember who insured them or what their liability limit was or where that policy is. So do keep a paper record of your policy in your church office on an ongoing basis so you have it. Some of the life of church work involves being engaged with vulnerable populations, and that occasionally results in later claims. So we want you to have the documentation. It's stressful enough to be in that situation, not to be wondering, were we covered, were we not covered? Now, in addition to property and insurance, the other key area for which trustees are involved is investments. There are different types of investments. So some investments have been restricted by the donor. The donor has given a gift or a bequest with very specific terms. And when the congregation accepted that gift, they, in essence, agreed to those terms. So if the gift was $6 million to paint the sanctuary lime green every 6 years, that is the only thing you can do with that gift, unless you go to court and get the terms changed. So you need to track restricted gifts. Congregations often receive bequests and put them into their investments and then lose track of the bequest amount or what they are free to touch of the bequest. Did it come saying that the principal was restricted and not to be used, but that the income earned could be? So be sure to track bequests so that you can know that you are honoring the donor's intention and you're only drawing on the amount authorized. A congregation may also have funds that have been restricted by the regional council or the presbytery. So, for example, it might be that your congregation sold their manse and the presbytery restricted use of those funds to interest only. Or it might be that the regional council authorized an amalgamation and the proceeds from the sale of one of the sites is restricted and only the interest earned is available. So there could be, those are also external restrictions. They've been imposed by another level of the church. You may also have funds that are restricted internally. If you collect money for a specific cause, you have to spend it on that cause. So it's important to be clear if you're going to collect money that you really are going to be doing what was said. For example, don't collect money for new carpet and then decide that you're actually instead just going to do something, pour cement for the flooring. That's quite a specific one, but if you collect for a capital campaign for a roof, what you collect for a roof, you have to spend on a roof. That's why it was given to you. And sometimes funds are restricted internally by the congregation for a specific purpose. So the congregation might say, the very first congregation I served, divided bequests in 4 ways. I think it was 4. Part of it was kind of any undesignated bequest without a specific purpose. Maybe we'll use the interest from this part can help fund mission and service, world outreach. The interest from this part could be for local mission. The interest from this part could be used for the building itself. So that's internally restricted. A congregation can do that. When we're talking about that, though, the people who put the restrictions on it, the congregation, can remove them.
Detect your speech.
So that doesn't constitute a restricted fund in the church's eyes because the restrictions that are on it could change.
Nope, not hearing a thing.
Is that true for other folks too? Someone mentioned they aren't hearing.
Sounds
I
fine.
think your sound is coming across fine overall.
Yeah, we can hear. Paul, you seem to be having an issue with your speakers or something. Have you tried headphones, perhaps? Sorry, it's not working for you.
It's important to have an investment policy if you have investments, and that policy should be set by your governing body. They should give direction about this is how we would like our money invested. You are, as a trustee, if there is no policy, governed by the prudent investor expectations. And in Ontario, that involves things like being aware of general economic conditions, taking into account inflation or deflation, the role of an investment in an overall portfolio, etc. It means, does this seem like a good, would this seem like a good idea? So I think when you're looking at that, it is most helpful for you to have an investment policy that says clearly, this is how we will hold our money. We'll have X amount in this type of short-term, secure. We might take a bit more risk with Y amount. But you want your investment policy very carefully written. You want it adopted by the governing body, and you want to make sure you're living within it. I have linked the United Church of Canada investment policy. It's highly complex because we have a larger portfolio, but there are templates for congregational investments. If you're working with a financial advisor, they can probably give you some help. You are able to work with a financial advisor. So think about using that expertise to help manage your resources. We also are able to help you resource gifts of stock if you receive them. Standard practice is considered to cash out stocks on the day you receive them, not to play, not in order that you're not appearing to play the market with them. The last congregation I served received an abundance of a very generous gift of Nortel stock just when Nortel started to slip in the market. And I remember thinking, oh, isn't that too bad we can't weather the storm? And it was not long before I was thinking, wasn't that a brilliant idea that we were advised to cash out on the day of receipt, because the stocks never recovered to that price again. Now, your regional council will have a policy on major assets. And what that means is your investment spending. When congregations have investments, they cannot simply spend down all of their investments. What they need to do is be drawing on their investments in accord with the major assets. And that, like with major renovations, will be a threshold. So check with your regional council what the threshold is. And when the regional council gives you that threshold, then you can know how much you can pull out of your major assets to use them. And when you need, without regional council approval, and when you need to be going to the regional council. Now, about cemeteries. You'd be surprised how many congregations think they don't have a cemetery, and they do. So I'm going to encourage you to think about, is there any cemetery historically attached to your congregation? And if so, to check the title of it. Sometimes people will say to me, well, there's a cemetery, but it was ours. Now it's a community cemetery, and there's a community board. And I will go, what's the name on the title? That's the important part. If it still says that it belongs to the name of your congregation's United Church, then it's still your responsibility. So you want to be sure the title is clear. Who has to take responsibility for this cemetery? Is it an active cemetery, or is it inactive? Meaning, is it still have graves available to be purchased? Whose name is on the license of the cemetery? Has the operator of it? How is the cemetery being financially managed? Sometimes congregations receive donations for their cemeteries and receipt them. You want to be able to track all of that. So don't make assumptions about your cemeteries. Be sure to check the information. The cost of a title search is very small, and it is worth it to be sure about your cemetery. In Ontario, if a community of faith is disbanding, we do often try to work with the municipality. The municipality is obligated to take abandoned cemeteries. We work very hard not to abandon our cemeteries, but to transfer them in an orderly way. Our cemeteries are the final resting place of the generations who gave us this rich legacy of land we have. We need to be respectful in the way in which we prepare for their permanent care. And we do our best to negotiate with local municipalities as much as possible to make that happen. If there is a transfer, if the congregation continues to be in existence, there is not a reason to transfer the cemetery. There will not be an openness to that from the municipality in general, I would say. If you take nothing away tonight, I hope you take away that you have phenomenal responsibility and itty-bitty authority, and that you have a very unique role in the structure of the church. There is no other role that is so clearly a both and to the local congregation and to the denomination, which gives you the authority by which you hold office. Even your regional council representatives, their role is to be a link and to be engaged in both, we hope, but they don't have a clear responsibility for the well-being of each in the way that trustees do. You are responsible to your two beneficiaries, the congregation and the United Church. We're encouraging you as trustees to hold those two together and to think about the future of the United Church, and to invite the congregations you serve as trustees to begin to dream for the future of the church in your area. Here. Our goal here is to sustain a United Church presence across. Our goal is across Canada, but tonight we have 5 regional councils. Our goal is across all of these regional councils. It's to be able to sustain a United Church presence, not each and every particular United Church site. We'd be thrilled if we can sustain every site. Please understand that's very much what we work towards. But we want to ensure that we're making decisions that will ensure the United Church has a presence in our areas for the next 100 years. And one of the ways we're doing that is through a program toward 2035. I hope you've talked about it some in your congregations. I've put the link to it on the website. Lots more information is coming. Spark the conversation if it hasn't happened. Be creative. Think about what it is we can do in partnership with one another to continue to be the United Church together throughout our regional councils. Now, I do have some resources to offer you, a list of them. For sure, one of the most helpful, and you can find it on the United Church website, there is a search engine at the top right hand. So just type in Trustee Handbook and it will come up. Very useful document. There is also the manual. These are the bylaws of the United Church. Of particular interest to trustees, the manual has alphabetized sections, is section G3, and the model trustee at the back. Never underestimate how helpful your regional council can be. Talk to your regional council. They know the policies that impact you. They can tell you how to make things happen. Additionally, there's a property network on ChurchX. ChurchX is the United Church of Canada's learning platform. If you're not registered on it, I'd encourage you to get registered now and then to join the property network. In fact, they recently in February did a seminar on cemeteries. The United Church has a property resource corporation, and that the goal of UPRC is to help congregations make best use of their property for the purposes of their ministry. And another resource available within our areas is Toronto United Church Council, which also has tools where it can help with congregations look at their specific site and opportunities they may have to maximize use of it and gain some benefit through that. Additionally, as I bring it to a close, I'm just going to highlight a few financial resources that are available. If your congregation has an income of less than $150,000 and less than $37,500 in unrestricted reserves, then there are a few programs through the denomination to which you can apply. A capital grant program, the Faithful Footprints grant, a technology grant, or the Church Manse modernization grant. These are all programs where you receive some funding, but you also have to expend some resources to do it. Throughout some of our regional councils, there are extension councils that hold financial resources that are available to local congregations. So check them out, see what you need to do. Several of them are listed on regional council websites. Your regional council could also advise you what's available. And never underestimate other potential funders. Sometimes there are government programs with particular aims where you might be able to access some funding to help with a particular ministry or program you're undertaking. I'll check with folks about questions that we received. Were there any themes or?
All right, so I think I have managed to capture all of the questions. There we go. Oh, and there's one more that just came in. For all of the questions, I have put a little thumbs up. So if your question does not have a thumbs up, I have not noticed it. So please either repeat it or perhaps at the end. Okay, just capturing these ones here. Okay. Well, first of all, thank you. That was very educational. It was a lot. I'm very grateful that we have this recorded as well. So first of all, a huge thank you for all of that. I have tried to capture the questions in sort of groupings of what, the slides will be emailed out to everyone later. So to the groupings. So Cheryl-Ann, I'm going to put this in the chat, and this is just a group. Oh, maybe this will work, but oh, it did work because there's a limit on how much you can put in. So these are kind of questions around working with other committees of the church. So we'll give you a second to take a quick look through.
So I think there are themes of questions about how do the trustees work with other bodies. It is very helpful if whatever model of governance the church is following, they've been clear about how they expect to connect with the trustees, such as do they hope to have a trustee on the governing body meeting? I think to be clear, When trustees have concerns, they should speak with the committee that's responsible for that concern. Has the starting point. We're worried about, let's go back to my example of the cracked sidewalk, that the trustees would go, it's a liability issue. We have a risk, that the trustees would speak with the property committee and take it with them. It's important to foster good communication. So figuring out what the planned opportunities will be for a representative of the trustees to engage with the other committees is important. And there's good wisdom, in my opinion, in having a representative of the board of the trustees on the board or on the governing body to help with that. Yes, the trustees are responsible for the reporting the real property, and the rest of the church operational work is handled usually by a finance committee that doesn't need to report to the trustees. That's handled a bit differently. Again, when you have overlapping responsibilities, the more you can be clear about them as a community of faith, the better. It is a helpful discussion for the trustees and the governing body to have, and to collect in a way that you record it, such as whatever constitution you're operating under. Remember, once again, models for that are available from your regional council. Oh, that's interesting about an endowment committee. Are they just managing? Are they managing? I'm intrigued. I think that's maybe, why don't you send me an email? We'll put my email in and we'll loop in your regional council. Let me know your congregation. And please say more than Trinity United, because we have a few. And we'll loop in your regional council. Customarily, investments would be handled by the trustees. If it's an endowment fund where like gifts from the memorial at, say, the funeral home, etc., are held, that might be different. I think I need more information. What next, Andrea?
Okay. So this grouping is around some of the investments and finances and funds.
Can trustees delegate the responsibility for tracking restricted gifts to a separate committee? So, like, as opposed to the entire board of trustees to a few trustees? Ideally, the information about restricted gifts should be within the record of the board of trustees. That's the place where we would normally keep it. I'm not. So bear in mind, like, I served in congregational for ministry for many years. I don't want to disrupt what's working well in your context. What I'm setting out for you is what we recommend. If you have something that's working in your context, then talk to your regional council. Like, there's lots of ways to do it as long as everybody's agreed that's how we're going to do it. No, the review of the investments would be that, sorry, I'm reading the question and answering it in my mind. The trustees would meet with the investment firm. So the finance committee is responsible for the operational finances of the community of faith. Investments and special gifts are what under the law we would call personal property. And those are some of the assets of the pastoral charge, and those are under the oversight of the trustees. Yeah, I think so. There's an there's one set up. There's a best committee of trustees and some board members. As I said, it's important as long as you're all agreed, this is how you're going to do it. And that is working for you. We don't need to disrupt what's working.
So the next item I have here, it's not exactly a question, but it's something I saw repeated by a number of people. And it's a comment that trustees has a significant responsibility, minimal decision-making authority, but a great deal of risk. And I wonder, could you speak to that a little bit?
I think it's a good summary. Yes, that's true. You have a lot of responsibility and you work at the direction of the governing body, so limited authority. And because you are the legal entity that represents the congregation, you carry that risk. It is in your best interest to have clear policies and clear direction. What I would often say to congregations when I was joining them for an event was they needed to care about their trustees enough to protect their trustees by having very clear things like an investment policy, that being clear about. I see there is one about insurance. You need to have a longer conversation because around your insurance. You need to certainly have the conversation with your regional council. Remember, the asset is not exclusively your own.
So this next group of questions here are around insurance as well. And I noticed just above, there's some questions asking about like director and officer insurance through the denomination.
I just saw that. I saw Rosemary's question there. Hi, Rosemary. Has trustees, can we personally sue if the church is sued? You are protected by, we have officers and directors insurance. We provide that to all leaders. You're protected by that. I do want to say there's a bit of a caveat. The caveat is, if you reach out to the regional council and the regional council documents advice to you, and you as trustees disobey what the regional council tells you, then you put that kind of protection at risk. But if you are acting in good faith, if you are connecting with your regional council, then you are well covered by our directors and officers insurance, and you are not personally responsible. There should be a motion by council to transfer funds from, that's directions to the trustees. And the trustees need to be sure the amount of the transfer doesn't trigger the major asset threshold set by the regional council. Oh, an additional insured for outside users. So, let's say you have a scouting troop that meets in your church. Scouts Canada will provide you with a certificate of insurance indicating that they've named you as an additional insured, so that if in a roughhouse session a child is injured in a scouting, the additional insured provides protection for you. It's a certificate and you hold it on file with your agreement for the group that's using the building.
Okay. Now the next group of questions is around appraisals. The first question asks if the recommended, how often should you get an appraisal done, or only when the insurance company asks? And then someone mentioned that they were told every 5 years and at $2,000 for an appraisal. And then this one is a little bit different, but it's a question around the fact that insurance premiums have really gone up. And if a church has challenges paying their premiums, are there options available to them?
So in terms of getting an appraisal, how often you should do it is what you need to sort out with your insurer, because you're looking for an insurance appraisal. We would ask you, if you get one, please to make sure you give a copy of it to your regional council. It's invaluable information for your regional council to have. But work on that schedule. We're not asking you to do it to meet one of our requirements, but you may find that you have to do it to meet your insurer's requirement. And that would be based on what your insurer says. Yes, insurance is very expensive. That's one of the reasons we developed our self-insurance plan, UCC Protect, so that we could try and minimize premium increases for communities of faith. If a congregation is struggling to meet, I think it's not a question of just paying the insurance premium. I think if paying the costs of what it takes to operate your site is becoming difficult, there are bigger questions you should be asking and planning for. It's a good time to check. For example, you could offer to host an event where you invited, 5 or 6 neighboring churches. Never invite just one. That won't go well. But you invite 5 or 6 neighboring churches to come and let's talk together about the future of the United Church in our area. And your regional council staff will facilitate that. They'd be pleased to have that invite. They'd be pleased to be having those conversations with you. So I think it's tricky, but if paying the bills of operating your ministry as you currently do is becoming difficult, then it's time to ask other questions, such as what are other models we might think about so we continue, as a community of faith, we continue to have a presence, that we're looking at our options. And congregations have been pretty innovative. They've chosen to free themselves from their buildings and to move in with another congregation, or either United Church or another denomination, and to hold their services in that space, or to rent a space at a more economical rate than the upkeep of, say, an older building. They've chosen sometimes to become part of a collective of churches that share staff as one way of having a larger pool of staff and no less expense to be able to participate in that. So lots of models where we can be inventive, but I think what we need to be is forward looking. So if making the insurance payment is becoming difficult, there's another bigger question we need to be having.
Thank you, Cheryl Ann. We have an abundance of questions and not an abundance of time. So I wondered, I'm putting you completely on the spot right now, but would it be okay with you if I compiled all of these questions and asked if you would perhaps answer them in a form that we could send out to all
Sure, we
of
can do
the
an FAQ.
registered? Perfect.
Yeah, we can do an FAQ.
Perfect. So
I'd be pleased to do that.
so those of you who have asked your question in the chat, I have captured them, and those I'll go back through and make sure that I've captured all of those afterward. But so be on the lookout for something to be emailed to you a little later with those questions answered. Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, and we definitely, I think, I appreciate the work you're doing and the complexity of it. And our goal is to help resource you so that work is less burdensome and you can focus on really the joys and the ministry of your local congregation.
Definitely. Thank you. And I think if I heard anything in this, it was when in doubt, contact your regional council representative.
I'll add one more line to that. When in doubt, contact your regional council representative. As somebody who previously worked in regional council life, and then be patient. like recognize that they deal with a large volume of work. So we live in a society that expects instantaneous responses. Bear in mind, they will get to you, or they will be able to refer you to the person who has the information for you. And they're committed to your well-being. So please don't hesitate to reach out to them. They just might not answer you today, just like that Q&A won't get to you this week.
Exactly. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. So we'll put the contact information emails in the chat again for everyone. And then we will, we have just a few things we want to add, and then we'll send you off to a regional specific conversation, because as you heard Cheryl Ann mention a few times, while the vast majority is the same for everyone, there are regionally specific items, and you will be hearing about those. If you are in Canadian Shields, you'll be hearing about those from Diane Matheson Jimenez. If you are in Antler River Watershed or Horseshoe Falls or Western Ontario Waterways, you will be hearing about that from John Neff and Beverly Tyhurst. And if you are in Shining Waters, you will be hearing about that from Jody Maltby. So a huge welcome to Jody Maltby, who those of us on staff are super grateful for, because she definitely knows a lot more about property and finance than probably all of us put together. We're grateful for her expertise and her generous heart. So Shining Waters and others, I invite you to sit back and we'll hear a bit more about things that are specific for Shining Waters.
Thanks, Andrea. I'm not sure I can live up to that introduction, but I will do my best. I am just putting into the chat for you a link to the Shining Waters property policy, and I'm going to share my screen as well so that we can all look at it together, but so that you can have your making sure, is that the
property policy? You got it.
Okay, great. And you'll notice that it refers to it as an executive and a CFC property policy. That's because in Shining Waters, some of the decisions have been made by our executive and some of them have been made by the Communities of Faith Commission, which is the commission that most directly supports congregations in a lot of their work, including a lot of your property decisions. And I do just want to mention those of you who've been following the review of ministry and funding priorities that the region has been going through for, we just finished and had some decisions in December. So those decisions mean that the commission is reviewing the property policy. And so there may be some things that get tweaked or changed a little bit about it, but most of what we're going to review tonight is not likely to change. But it's always helpful if you're making any property decisions, first of all, to go to the website and see the most current version of the property policy. I do that myself. I never pretend to remember from one conversation to the next exactly what is in the policy. So I always like to go and check it. Or also you're welcome to speak to your Communities of Faith minister and make sure that you're getting the accurate information. But some of the pieces we particularly wanted to talk about tonight, the first is the major renovations policy. And the nice thing about our property policy is you can, in the table of contents, you can just click and go right to where you need to go. So the manual instructs regional councils to set the baselines for when you need to seek regional approval for a major renovation. And so in Shining Waters, we've said that any project over $100,000 requires approval from the commission, but they also said that renovations between $50,000 and $100,000 can be approved by the regional staff lead, which is me. And so part of the way our property policy is set up is to enable us to be fairly nimble. And so it's a bit more of a process. If it has to go to the Communities of Faith Commission, I can turn around those approvals a lot more quickly. And so that's why the first threshold allows me to do that approval. Those approvals are always recorded in the minutes of the Communities of Faith Commission so that they are aware of the work that is being done within congregations, and I am required to get the same information that the Community of Faith Commission would need in order to do the approval. It just allows us to turn some things around a bit more quickly. The other piece about the major renovations policy, we did have a question just in the last year or so about the difference between a renovation and a repair. And so we did add a clarification into the property policy, confirming that renovations include repairs, restorations, improvements, and remodeling. So if you are doing work on your building that is going to cost more than $50,000, you do need to come to the region for approval. Now, another question that we had 2 or 3 years ago, and that we responded to, a congregation, there are congregations that will be doing a lot of capital work in a year. They have a capital plan and they're working through it over a number of years, and they didn't want to have to come for every individual project for approval. And so the commission considered that request, and you can either submit a request for approval based on an individual renovation as it occurs, or you can submit an annual capital budget. So if you're doing multiple projects in 1 year, you can submit one budget and get them all approved at the same time. Again, just trying to be nimble. The other piece that I was supposed to talk about tonight is major assets, and I found it very helpful to hear Cheryl Ann's presentation on major assets. Our regional council has not done a specific policy around that. We simply identified what is considered major assets. So it was really helpful for me to learn about the potential role that the regional council could play in terms of investments. Certainly, the regional council has policies in the property policy related to funds that have been restricted, in particular funds from the sale of property, and when and how a congregation can access those. But if you have pre-existing investments or investments that have come from other than property, we don't actually have a policy about that. So we're going to take that back to our Communities of Faith Commission and probably consult with our Finance Committee to determine what that policy should be. So stay tuned for that. The other pieces that I wanted to particularly highlight for you are around the use of manse funds. So historically, if you sold a manse and those funds were restricted, you are able to access the annual interest income from those funds to support the funding package for your minister. And that's traditionally what that has been used for, and it continues to be used for. However, and this was actually our executive at the time that we were transitioning into the regional council, there was a recognition that for some congregations, the only additional funds that they have might be from the sale of the manse. And so restricting them might limit congregations in some of the other capital work that they are able to do, or other support they might want to give to their minister. So there are some specific uses that you can request permission to access your MANTS funds for. And as I say, some of them are to continue to support housing for your minister. Some congregations want to be able to support their minister as they pursue permanent housing. But there is also some opportunities for capital renovation projects in particular and other major capital projects, or bridge financing to facilitate the sale of church property during an amalgamation. So there are some things that you could ask to be able to use your restricted MANTS funds for. You do have to keep a base reserve of $150,000 in there, and that's money in case you ever get to a point where you are needing to close and you don't have the money to cover the costs up to the closing. And so that's a baseline. And the commission is always going to ask, if you come and say, we'd like to access $100,000 from our MANTS fund to do a roof repair, the commission is going to ask you what your plan is to be able to continue to fund your minister's compensation, because that is the first call on the financial resources of a congregation, is being able to pay the salary of your ministry personnel. But you may be doing that without having to access funds from your MANTS fund, in which case it makes good sense to be able to access them for other uses. Or you may have enough money in your MANTS fund that taking out a portion of it would not prevent you from meeting the compensation needs for your minister. So that's just another piece that not a lot of folks in our regional council might be aware of. The other piece that I wanted to talk to you about is leases. The manual does say that leases require regional approval. In Shining Waters, we clarify that does not include standard administrative leases. Like if you lease a photocopier, you don't need to get our approval for that. Also, if you have occasional renters, so a local choir, community choir, or concert band wants to rent your space to do a single concert, you don't need to get regional approval in Shining Waters for that. What the commission says is that if you are renting out space for exclusive use and or the rental income is going to be more than $50,000 annually, you do need to get regional approval for that. So if you have a Montessori school or a daycare, or you've rented out some office space to someone and they have exclusive use of that space, then you need to get that lease approved. Also, if you're renting and you have a renter that is using enough of your space that the annual income is $50,000, even if it's not exclusive, you still need to get that lease approved. And this also applies to land leases as well. If you have for example, if you've got some housing or a seniors facility on your property and you need to renew that land lease, that does need to come to the regional council for approval. Same thing for loans. If you are getting a mortgage or a loan that if you're incurring a debt, you do need to get approval from the Communities of Faith Commission. And again, I can approve loans up to $100,000. There's no base. Any indebtedness needs to be approved. And so up to 100,000, I can approve it. And beyond that, it does go to the Communities of Faith Commission. And we try to turn those around as quickly as possible because, we don't want anyone waiting and wondering if they're going to be approved. There is one piece related to the sale of a manse that I also wanted to talk to you about because it is a bit unique. We have a process for when you're selling property. We have I would encourage you, if you're thinking about selling your property, purchasing property, developing property, I would encourage you to reach out to the regional council through your community of faith minister, and if, particularly if it's a development or a sale, I'm going to be invited into the conversation as well. But again, we had feedback from a congregation that was concerned because they were selling their manse. They had gotten approval to sell it, but they said, you know, normally if we're selling a church, you get an agreed upon agreement of purchase and sale, and that comes to the regional council for approval. And so you put a condition in the sale that it's conditional for 15 days to get approval. That's fine when you're selling a church building. When you're selling a manse, when you're selling in the housing market, the turnaround is much quicker. And so we had a congregation say to us, like, that's gonna be a problem if we have to put that into the agreement of purchase and sale. We are not going to be attractive to buyers. And so, and let me just go back up and make sure I say this exactly right here. Sale of a manse, here we go. So you come and get approval of the listing price of the property, provided the sale price is at or above the listing price, and the community of faith works with both a real estate agent and a lawyer. You don't have to come back to get approval for the agreement of purchase and sale. And so that's another instance where the commission was responsive. And I think what I'm wanting to make sure folks understand is the commission is required by our polity to give approval on certain on property transactions, but the commission doesn't want the policies that we've put in place to be punitive or problematic. So they very much understand this to be a dialogue with congregations. If you're working on a property transaction and you're struggling with a piece of the property policy, please do reach out and talk to us about it. And the commission will always consider any concerns that you raise, and we'll try as much as possible to be reasonable and responsive. So we understand this property policy very much to be a living document. We will update it as often as needed to make sure that it's going to support communities of faith, because right at the very beginning of the policy, it says that the commission is committed to making decisions that support healthy and viable communities of faith, and also to trying to allow greater flexibility in the use of funds so that congregations can thrive and can pursue your ministry in the community. I think those were the points I wanted to lift up. Again, I just really encourage you, if you're thinking about any property transaction, please reach out to us sooner rather than later. We're happy to be involved and to chat with you and to offer advice and to make sure that when it comes time for you to get the approvals that you need, that it's going to be a smooth process for you. We don't want to surprise a congregation who's been working away for 6 months or a year and suddenly they discover that there's something they didn't know about our property policy. We really want to be in conversation with you throughout these processes, because they're important for the life of your congregation, and we don't want to be a barrier. So that's what I wanted to say. I don't know, Andrea, because I haven't been watching. Have any questions come in?
No, we haven't had any questions come in. I think
good.
Everyone's pretty overloaded with information, and the questions may come a little later on.
Well, and the beauty is we're not going anywhere. So you know how to reach all of your pastoral relations and communities of faith ministers. And I'm also available as a resource on the property issues as well.
Andrea, there is one question from Susan Kaiser.
Oh, I'm sorry, Susan. I sort of assumed that was for Cheryl Ann's presentation, but I don't know why I assumed that.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Oh, maybe. Yeah, because it came in 827. So,
So thanks, Unju. So there is that one question, Jody.
Yeah.
So Susan asks, when we rent space or let someone use our space for no charge, are those users treated the same for insurance purposes?
I think so of course the first thing I want to do is go, because I know there's a really good document on the United Church's website that talks about who should get third-party insurance. And so I encourage us all to look at the resources on there. I think in part it will depend on the circumstances around the usage. I think it's always important to make sure that you have the insurance you need. So if a group is using your space, you need to do an assessment of the risk. If a group is going to come in and sit around on chairs and just have a conversation, that's probably a pretty low risk um, activity. But there might be activities where there could be risk. And so I don't know if I can quickly find that. Maybe when we put that together, the FAQ, there is a really helpful document on the United Church website that goes through, the various types of users and how you assess the risk and who should be asked to have third-party insurance. So maybe we can include a link to that. I know we're over time and I don't want to hold people here, but I think it's a really helpful tool for folks.
Yeah,
can I
that's a great
share a
idea.
little bit of my experience? So when I was in a congregational ministry, our trustees, the board of trustees were very diligent. So anybody who uses church, even though they don't pay any fees, they were required to have insurance, even just for a birthday party or a family. So there is a 1 day insurance that they can purchase, and that's how we did it, I guess. But then we'll just wait for Cheryl Ann to answer more detailed answers.
Awesome. Yeah. When we send out the FAQs, we'll also make sure we've got all the links that have been mentioned. And we'll also get the links from the other regions for anything they've got so that everyone has the same information. Well, friends, it's 8:39 and we're just 9 minutes over, which is actually quite incredible considering how much information we've gone through. Of course, this has not been completely exhaustive of all of the information. And so hopefully by now, you know to reach out to your regional council representative. And if you're not sure exactly who that person is, because in Shining Waters, we do have a number of people, just reach out to whoever you see first or that you feel comfortable with. And if it happens to be someone who's not working with your specific church, we're more than happy to pass that on to the person who is. So don't worry about emailing us, even if you're not sure if we're your specific person, because that happens all the time, and we're happy to spread around to who can help who the best. Great big thank you to Jody for sharing that and for Unju for joining us. And I missed her earlier. I'm sorry, but we've got Kim Udakai here as well, who is also one of our pastoral relations and community of faith support ministers. And Kim works primarily with ethnic ministries and Indigenous ministries and ministers. So everybody, I hope that you have a wonderful sleep tonight. And if you're having a hard time falling asleep, just pull out the trustee manual and just get started. and we're so grateful that you could join us tonight. And for those who might be joining us later who couldn't make us here in real time, we're grateful for you also coming. And we're especially grateful for our presenters for helping us to create this resource that will go and live on our website for future trustees for hopefully quite a long time. Thank you all for the work you do, whether you are a trustee or you're just discerning about becoming a trustee. Thank you for the way that you continue to serve the church, to serve God's mission in the world, helping us to be the hands and feet, the ears and the eyeballs and the mouth and the heart of Jesus Christ. So may God go with us all, helping us to continue to live out our callings to the best of our abilities. And when we struggle, may we remember that we are never alone. I think the almost 300 people who joined us tonight is a huge testament to that. And if you do feel like maybe you're alone in this, I hope you remember to call the regional council. So thank you. Have a great night, a great sleep tonight, and we look forward to connecting with you in many ways in the future.